Welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church, to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting. Welcome back to the Gottesdienst crowd. This is Jason Braaten, your host. Today we're going through the Gospel reading for Trinity 20, and we have back with us Dave Petersen. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you.
All right, so why don't we just head straight into it? Would you read, Matthew 22, 1 to 14?
Okay. At that time, Jesus answered and spoke to them again by parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for his son, and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, and they were not willing to come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, 'Tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding.' But they made light of it and went their ways, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. But when the king heard about it, he was furious, and he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore go into the highways, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding.' So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who did not have on a wedding garment. So he said, 'Friend, how did you come in here without a wedding garment?' And he was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, 'Bind him hand and foot, take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen.'"
All right, so we already had a parable similar to this in Luke chapter 14 earlier in the Trinity season, but I don't remember what Sunday of Trinity it is. It's early on. It's like the second or third Sunday, isn't it?
I don't remember. It's definitely between Trinity and now.
Well, thank you. That kind of narrows it down.
Definitely wasn't later than 20.
Okay.
Yeah, so that one you had the excuse making, right?
Right.
Here
Yeah.
You don't have any excuses. They just make, and they treat the servants spitefully and kill them even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
There's a lot more violence in this one.
There really is. And I mean, is it different too then because I think the Luke one only has it as a feast and not like a wedding feast? I mean, does that bring a different character understanding of within kind of salvation history, what this parable is about, or that this is a king in Matthew's account here? Or, I mean, are they even the same parable, or are they focused on different things?
I think they're pretty much the same parable.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this parable has more, I think. But, I think the general idea of the first half of the parable for this one is that, a lot of people refuse the invitation, right? Mm-hmm. Because they don't, which I think the point is they don't really believe that this is the king or they would come, or they don't think he's really the king, or they don't think he has any power or can do anything for them. I mean, in this case, they even grab his servants and kill him, which is pretty dumb, right?
Well, I mean, this is following on the heels of the wicked tenants parable too.
Right. Anyway, I think they're the same pair. I think the main point of this, or the main comparison in this first half of this parable, is the same as the other one. That is that people are invited, by grace, and they reject it because they're stupid. Right? That's the general gist. I don't think the parable.
So point one, invited by grace, but they're stupid, so they reject.
Right. Well,
point two, don't be stupid.
Yeah, that's right. Intellectually and morally stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then this one has so anyway, what else would be the point of the other parable? Or what would be the point of this parable if that's not it?
No, I mean, I think it is, but I'm just wondering if, like, in terms of point of time, right?
Oh,
Um, so the one in Luke comes earlier. So I'm wondering if this is not like two different accounts of the same incident, right? These are two separate parables. They sound alike, like they rhyme, they echo,
yeah.
but they have a similar point. But one is a like end time reference,
Oh,
like,
I see.
and one is the kingdom is among you right now, so heed the call.
Yeah.
Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the other one is a little more, right? He sends out multiple times trying to get them to come, and then they go searching for people in the highways and byways, the lame, the maimed, the blind, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I mean, there is a more, yeah, the other one's nicer.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, but yeah, so you might be right. I can see that being correspondence. You're saying the Luke one would be that there's a little more time in the Luke one, so it's like present tense, and this one is a little more pointed towards, even though that time runs out too. But
I mean,
here,
I think it's kind of like at this point, maybe Jesus is saying this comes just before, right, what we just heard this past weekend, or for Trinity 18, the questioning of the Sadducees, and then the questioning of the Pharisees, right? And their silence. So it's kind of like, So it's kind of like you had your chance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I never thought of that before, but I think that does make sense. That this one's got a little more, it's a little quicker to the end, and it's slightly more dire in that it's a king sending out armies. And then the second half, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is really pointed. But I think it's almost like this is like two separate parables.
Yeah. I don't think it's a different accounting of the same thing or the same events. I think he's giving these two separate parables, one at a particular time in his ministry and one towards the end, which is very much more pointed on like you've heard this before. I'm going to tell you it again, but here's the rest of the story.
Well, or even I was thinking, I mean, I never thought of this before, but it's sort of like maybe he told this parable early, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, it's a year later or 2 years later, and now he's like, all right, let me add a few. I got a few more ideas about how to make this stronger or more pointed, or so he's telling maybe the same parable, but he's adding some details to make it more direct.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, are the servants then different? And if we kind of look at the allegory of this, are the servants different here, right? So that you get not just the prophets, but also the apostles, right? So the prophets have been killed,
right?
And then the apostles are getting sent out, along with John the Baptist, and they're killed.
Right.
So, is there more to this? The point of this than just you're stupid for not heeding the call.
Well, yeah, and okay, so you're stupid for not heeding the call. They're also these servants are going to be avenged.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he didn't let you kill. He does care what you do to his servants.
Yeah.
And this isn't going to be passed over forever. So, their lives weren't spent in vain. They did a good work. They did what they were commanded to do, and they've been rewarded. And vengeance is going to be visited upon you because of this, right?
Yeah, vengeance is the Lord's,
right? And the people that you're right,
He will repay.
The Muslims that behead Christians are going to pay. The people that treat the pastor, throw him out of office, they're going to pay. I mean, if they throw him out of office wrongfully, right? Yeah. I mean, I think, and again, that's not in the other one. So there is a kind of just, again, I think maybe upping the stakes some.
Yeah. All right. So you would just go along with kind of the beginning part of, the Luke passage, but this is a whole lot more urgent.
Yeah. I mean, he's sending out armies, destroying those murderers, burning up their cities, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't obviously, it's not genocide because there's somebody left because they have to go and, so the people who are invited, the Jews, right? In this case, they're not worthy. So
it's always the Jews.
Well, it has to be. I mean, right? At this point
kidding.
in history, right? I mean, it's fine. It could be the Germans. I'm at this point now. If we told that, it'd be the Germans or maybe
and the
Americans. Yeah, but at the time, it was the Jews. And then then the servants, the ones that aren't dead, go out to the highways, gather. I love this too, right? Both good and bad and good. So you have in the other parable the maimed, the lame, the blind, that very Lucan concern for the poor and the weak and so forth. But now it's actually right. In fact, I didn't. What verse is that? Is it agathos or is it kalos? Do you remember? For the good and the bad.
I don't know. I'll just check real quick.
What verse number is that? I'm trying to find it here. The wedding. The king said to the servants, hands. Oh, I went too far. Oh yeah, it's agathos. So ponerus and agathos. So that's definitely moral, right? Agathos has that moral character. Only God is good. That's the word agathos, not kalos. Kalos is, means beautiful or noble or fitting even, right? Jesus is the kalos shepherd, but only God is agathos. So that's really, both the and poneros is also, a little bit more loaded than just bad. The wicked, the evil. Yeah. So you've got this, where all of the sudden the people that were supposed to be good. So if you don't want to say the Jews, you could say the Pharisees, or the Sadducees. I do sometimes, because we live in such contentious times, I do like to point out on occasion, like in sermons or in other places, like when John, talks about the Jews, right? He means, of course, the Jewish leadership primarily, right? If you say, if Angela Merkel, whoever's now the prime minister, did they settle that? Is that still, they're waiting for I don't understand how these parliamentary governments work.
I don't know.
But anyway, whatever. When she talks about the Americans, right? She doesn't mean you. She's talking about the government. And that's the way, so it isn't some sort of racist thing, but the Jewish leadership, in particular, the priests and the religious leaders that are rejecting all of this. So they were supposed to be good, right? They looked good, but they weren't really. And then it's like the point of them being both the wicked and the good is it's actually indiscriminate, right? Go out to the highways, gather up all who you found, right? There's no invitation. But before, people were invited, and then he goes out very nicely. Look, everything's ready, right? You said you would come. You were warned, so it's time. Now come. And then they make light of it. They go their own ways. But now it's just go get them. So it does seem like...
Well, you do get that in the Luke one, right? You get and compel them to come in.
Compel them, right.
But yeah, again, it's a lot more urgent.
Well, it's like the fishing. It's like the throwing the net in and pulling up good fish and bad fish. But there is going to be a sorting, right? Because that's going to come. You're going to have the guy without the. I don't know why we were talking about. I lost my train of thought. But the anyway, that there is that kind, right? The urgency. This is going to be filled. The elect are going to be there. You do have the sort of Lutheran doctrine of, conversion here, the monergistic reality. Nobody makes a choice. Yeah. The people that made the choice all made the wrong one, right? So now they're brought in. The wedding hall's filled with guests, and then you really get, part two, which I usually have spent most of my time in part two because we kind of already had part one, as you noticed, a couple months ago.
Is there the word for supper or the dinner?
Yeah.
Is there anything to that? It's not the usual word, that ariston. Some dictionaries say it's like breakfast or
what? What are you
noon
talking
meal.
About? I thought it was gamu. Where are you? What are you reading?
No, that means wedding.
Wedding. Well, I thought it meant also the wedding feast. Where's the word?
Oh, goodness. No,
Is
I
it in
gotta
the
find it in
beginning?
the Greek. Yeah, it's in the beginning. No,
Let's
it's
see.
verse 4. All right. Behold my meal, but it's like the word for breakfast or
Huh.
the noon meal.
I'm still not seeing
Like
it. Where's the word? What is it? What's the word itself?
Ariston.
In verse 4? Oh, there
Yeah.
it is. I see it
Yeah,
now.
it's like towards.
Ariston. Yeah, I don't know that word. Yeah, I don't know it. So I don't know what that would be. Why is it? Huh. I don't
It's not
know.
like Neon, or it's not.
Right. No, you're right.
It's not your
Not the
usual
normal word.
words for supper or a feast or something like that. So
I
I was
thought the
just
word
curious
got.
if there was
Yeah, I don't
anything.
know. I thought gamu, it's just the word wedding, I thought could mean the meal, right? Come to the wedding is,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I mean, then they
But
use
there's,
this
right.
word.
Yeah, you're
I mean,
right.
is this just indicative of the fact that most of these weddings, like, they lasted for days, and so they didn't come at first, and so he sends them back out, and it's the
Oh,
next meal. I mean, is that what's going on?
maybe it's just indicative of how bad our Greek is. Since I don't know what this word means, I don't have it. This is like what you're asking is like the sort of thing that what's that guy's name? Ken Bailey, is that right? The
Oh, yeah, yeah, Kenneth Bailey.
Kenneth Bailey. That's the sort of thing he really majors in. The cultural
Oh,
realities.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know much about that, and I'm kind of
Suspect of it.
suspect of it. Yeah, because I think okay, fine. Same thing. People do this with at the institution of the supper. Which cup was it? And then they're going like to the Seder meal and trying to figure out what the there that's okay. I'm not against that. There's some place for kind of archaeological work and that sort of thing, even textual archaeology to try to figure these things out. But ultimately, these texts have to be cross-cultural and have to make sense without the exact details of those things, right? Like Kenneth Bailey goes a bit too far.
Well, sure. I mean,
because they
yeah,
if you can't understand what this parable means unless you know how many breakfasts there are at a Jewish wedding.
that's
I mean,
that.
no, I know you weren't saying that, but I'm just I think it is important, I think, at some point for us to notice that it's not that this doesn't happen apart from history or culture. Of course, it doesn't. At the same time, the words of Holy Scripture, right? These are universal realities that the exact thing doesn't have to be known. How's that?
Well, not the exact thing, but I mean, you get to the point, like in that second part that we're about to get to, that like knowing some of that is actually helpful.
Yeah, no, sure. Some of it is, but
But you're
I'm
right. You can
nervous
take it
about
too far, and then you start like trying to fit this into a first
right,
century,
right.
exact context. But
What would a Jewish shepherd boy think of this? Yeah, probably he probably wouldn't think anything. I mean, it's like that kind of stuff. I
yeah,
think.
he would have been stupid. He would have rejected.
Well, I mean, there is a kind of. Sometimes I think that maybe I'm just being fundamentalist here, but I I sometimes think that kind of pseudo scholarship stuff, because it's a bit speculative anyway, is I'm afraid it undermines the perspicuity of Scripture, right? If you're not a if you're not a scholar of Palestinian culture
Yeah.
at the turn of the millennia, then you don't know anything. But anyway, I don't know. So I don't know, but so that's just actually all a big excuse to say I don't know anything about Jewish weddings and how long they went on and all that. I mean, I don't. That is a problem for me at the on the last Sunday of the church year, because I can't figure out what's going on with those virgins
Yeah.
waiting for the bridegroom. I mean, I've been told, but I just for some reason, right? That's
Yeah.
not
Well,
how
I mean,
we do it.
yeah, that's well, we do kind of.
Yeah, I guess we make them wait, right? We go to a reception first.
I
Is that
know,
what you
and
mean?
then you're really annoyed when they make you wait too long.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, there are certain aspects, but it's not like days. And I mean,
Right.
and Bailey
Falling
goes on
asleep.
about in that text about like they travel through the town, and
I
I'm
know.
like, but even we still do that, right? They get one of those party
Yeah,
buses and they start going through the town, or I don't know. They're
Right.
like,
Take pictures too long, or right.
oh, yeah, and that's awful. Hey, we
All
have to
right, well-
remember this day because we're going to drink too much, so we can't.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, so we don't know. We don't know what Ariston is.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I can't read that word. So,
Well, I mean, I couldn't either, so I had to look it up, and it just says like dinner, noon meal, breakfast.
dinner, noon meal, or breakfast. That's all three of them.
No, like
dinner
as in the noon meal.
Country people. Oh yeah,
like me.
That's right. In my world, that's lunch.
Yeah,
Dinner's
I know.
in the evening. Okay.
All right. Well, so it's just whatever it is. It's part of the feast.
Yeah. So you were trying to make it a like they're all. So tell those who were invited. You're saying like he says to the servants, look, he sent out his servants, but they wouldn't come. Right. So they missed the first part.
Yeah,
and then
but he's overly gracious, and so he's sending them. He still wants them in.
You can still come to you missed the wedding. You can come to the reception.
Yeah,
right.
So it shows the patience and endurance of the king.
Yeah,
right.
Until he decides to send his army and burn the whole town.
But that's only after they kill.
Yeah, that's after they kill and treat them shamefully, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So that always sounds Homeric to me, right? Homeric. There we go. Right. This is like Aristotle mistreating the body of Hector. Right. What do they do? Why would they do that? Treat them shamefully. It makes it worse, right?
Yes.
It's not enough to just seize them and kill them, but they torture them first, or they do something disgraceful to them. And of course, if you do it to them, you're doing it to the king.
Yeah.
So yeah, the king's angry. Well,
I mean, that's a really good point. What you do to the king's servants, you do unto the king.
Well, and I mean, they know they are. This is their mocking of it, because he's not a real king. What's he going to do to us? You know, we can do whatever we want, and there'll be no consequences. But why would you want to do that? I mean, that's the strange thing about evil, right? What if he couldn't do anything to you? You know, why would you do that anyway? That there's this bizarre reality of the way that evil tries to assert power just for the sake of having power.
Yeah.
That is really irrational.
Well, I mean, if it comes down to power, the one who shows the most power wins. And that's where God is different.
Right.
He knows he has the power, but instead he uses his authority over things. Right. And he extends that authority. And authority is always under order. Power doesn't care about divine laws or structure or order. It just only wants to be overcome, or to be the one that overcomes.
Right.
It only cares about victory.
Right. Well, yeah, right. And subordinating everything to itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just have never had any opportunity for power, but I feel like this has no attraction to me.
Well, that's why you should be district president.
I'm not seeking the office. That was my campaign speech. No, there's I have never understood. So, and I'm just like, I have never engaged in a single act of vandalism in my entire life.
No. Yeah, I don't think I have either.
I mean, because it makes. Why would I do that? I mean, why would I just destroy something for? I've done lots of wicked things, but I mean, they had some purpose. You know.
You never TP'd someone?
Okay, we TP'd people, but that doesn't do any damage. That was always like, I think pretty innocent fun. I mean, relatively innocent, right? They had to clean it up the next day, but I mean, it wasn't that hard. I've cleaned up. I've been TP'd. I've cleaned it up. It's not that big a deal. I mean, that's not like you ruined something. I didn't
Right,
like
no.
smash a mailbox or, you know,
Key someone's car.
spray paint a phallic symbol on somebody's door or something. I mean, I know sometimes they're done by children. So, okay, children don't know what they're doing, even teenagers, but it's just strange to me. And so I like this idea of, I can understand maybe, look, if some lunatic sent me an invitation, said, hey, come to the wedding, I'm having a big feast, some homeless guy that lives in Fort Wayne that I know, I wouldn't go, right? I mean, I would be like, no, you're delusional, you smell bad, I don't like being around you, you're probably drunk, I don't want to deal with you, right? So I wouldn't go because I don't believe he's the king. That makes sense to me, unbelief.
Mm-hmm.
But then why treat the messengers shamefully and kill them? The problem is, it's not just that they don't think he's the king. They actually do know he's the king, and they don't want him to be. They want to be king.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a John Plus line, but I use it all the time. I think this is that he says, this is like the problem with like Dawkins and these militant atheists that are running around. I don't know if people are even doing that anymore, trying to disprove Christianity. I mean, like, in a public way. And he says, I don't believe in unicorns, but I don't feel the need to tell everybody about their non-existence.
Yeah.
And, and why is it that, so I suppose the atheists would say they go after Christianity because it's the dominant form and it's so oppressive. That's why they're obsessed with it. Is that their claim?
Well, I mean that, and it leads to all sorts of evil.
Yeah, it's bigotry and racism and sexism and stuff. Yeah, but so does Islam.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, Islam actually does. So why don't they spend a little time with that?
I think they're equal opportunity.
Oh, are they? Okay.
The new atheists? Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. It just seemed like, well, I guess I don't pay it. I guess if they go after the Muslims, I don't care. But anyway, there is this.
No, I mean, the difference is like Christians will debate Dawkins at all. Muslims will just blow them up.
There you go.
Right.
Well, eventually God is going to do that too, right? I mean,
yeah.
He's going to send his armies, and he's.
But I'm still not buying that you don't understand the exercise of power.
I understand it, I guess, but I mean, I don't understand the appeal. It doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, but you are a guy, and just like me and all these we are guys who use words.
Yeah.
And we exercise power through words. I mean, what does James say about the tongue?
Right.
I mean, so the tongue is probably one of the harshest weapons in our arsenal.
Sure. And influence, right?
And we can do a vast amount of damage in what we use, what we say about people or how we say it or when we argue or type. And I know that I've responded on blogs, and this is so it's stupid, but it's like suddenly I feel like this righteous, look what I just did. I just conquered the Turks at the gates of Vienna. But no, I just wrote a Facebook post.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Okay. I guess you're right. I guess I was thinking about power in more a more physical sense. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, in what way now is power exercised more than anything?
Yeah, I mean, words have always been more powerful, and I mean, influence. I mean, I've told the congregation this, right? I don't vote at the voters' assembly. Yeah, big deal. I have influence, right?
Right.
So I'd rather have influence than just one vote.
Yeah, you're on all the committees.
Right. It's the same thing with the Missouri Synods. I love the Missouri Synod's political structure because it gives the fake appearance of equality. Right? Oh, it's equal. The lay people have one vote. The pastors have one vote. But it's a total crock because, right, when you go to convention, I mean, I'm telling everybody how to vote, but the lay people listen. So, it's not equal at all.
Right.
So you're right in that sense. But again, I guess, and maybe you're probably right. I'm just not, I'm not trying to be self-righteous, or I'm just trying to, when I see this sort of just like Like, would I just try to get somebody to vote for something just to prove I could do it, even if I didn't care about what the vote was for? Like, yeah,
No.
you're right. I've tried to get people to vote for things. So I've used words, I've used influence, and maybe I've not even, okay, and I've enjoyed it. I'll just
Yeah.
say that. However, I can't imagine myself saying, let's just see if I could get him to do this just to exercise power over him.
See, I don't think that's what's going on with these people. I don't think.
Why treat them shamefully? Why do that to them? Why not just send them away or just kill them? Fine. I mean, fine, but why treat them shamefully? That's what
because they're mad at the king. I mean, I think it's more than they know that he's king. And like you said, they don't want him to be king.
Yeah.
And and it's not even that they want to be king themselves necessarily. They just don't want him.
And they want to punish him.
Well, I mean,
they're mad. He's bugging them.
Think of like Trump derangement syndrome, or now think of, the Republicans against whatever Democratic president there was.
Right.
I mean, we all do the same things. It's just, we recognize that he's still in the office of the president, but, we'll say all sorts of nasty things. And this is the same thing that has happened for a very, very long time now. Trump derangement syndrome took that to a whole new level. But I mean, I don't know. I think they know that he's king, but they reject that. They don't want him as king,
and they want to hurt him. They want him to suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes. Yeah. They think they need vengeance for how badly he's mistreated them by trying to get them to come to a wedding.
That or.
No, I think that's enough, actually. I mean, I think it's insulting to them and to their pride that they would be his guests, that he would provide, or that he dares to think that even like they don't have better things to do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is the rejection of the gospel.
That they owe it to him.
Yeah, right. As though they're his subjects.
Yeah.
And they didn't. He never checked with them to find out if this was convenient, good time for them. Just all that kind of really outrageous kind of arrogance, I suppose, and then the defensiveness that comes up because they know. Yeah, so I guess okay.
And I mean, I think then there's a further question, like, what kind of son is this?
Well, I know that's really the son himself is almost unnecessary in this parable, right? I think.
But it's his wedding.
Yeah, but I think the second person of the Holy Trinity is the king here. I think the son is sort of a red herring.
Do you?
Yeah, I think that
even though we just had the parable of the tenants,
yeah.
And the son is clearly the one they're killing. I don't know. I'm not buying it.
Well, okay. So you think the son is the servant, not the prophets and the apostles?
No, I think the son is the son, and the king is the father.
Well, that's what everybody thinks. So that's what I expect of you. Parables are normally because here
so it's a rejection ultimately of the son, and thus a rejection of the father.
Well, sure, but I think that I think try it this way for a second, right? So the certain king who arranges a marriage for his son, right? The certain king, if this is the second person of the Holy Trinity, who then sends the apostles who get killed, right? Then it's still a rejection of the Son of God, of the second person of the Holy Trinity, but he's the king. And I think the marriage that's going on is actually the church.
Yeah, to the Son.
Well, I think I mean, you can't. I don't want to push this too far. But I think that in some ways, who exactly the Son is in this parable doesn't really matter. They're not reject. I mean, I suppose they could be not going because they don't like the Son, but I think they're not going because they don't like the King. I think the ones who are sent are the apostles. I think we're the Son. The church is getting married, and that this is this. And in fact, what I think, I mean, of course, either way, what they're really being invited to is to be part of the family.
Yeah.
Right. They're not coming just to be, ultimately just to be guests at this wedding, and that's going to be the problem. In fact, let's go on to the next part, right? What's the problem with this clown that shows up without the wedding garment? I mean, he's just coming as a spectator. and no spectators allowed, right? He doesn't take this thing seriously at all. And there's your tie with he's speechless back to to 2 weeks ago with the Sadducees and then the Pharisees both being rendered speechless, right? He's done, right? There's no excuses at this point. No defense is given, right? It's a rhetorical question. How did you come in here without a wedding garment, right? Is just pure accusation, and we're done, and you don't get to talk anymore. And then, I mean, this sounds.
Wait a minute, do you make anything of it, being passive, the being garmented or clothed?
No, I don't.
No,
I don't.
So I mean, so there are some
because it's his fault.
Okay,
go ahead.
I would agree it's his fault, but I mean, so if they're just pulling people off the street, right?
Yeah.
Where do they all get their garments?
Right.
Right. Are they being given them?
Yeah,
at the door.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
He refuses.
So it's being. Yeah.
He's just a jackass. He's just like, hey, I'm not wearing your fancy. I don't wear chasubles. I'm not a girl. Right. Whatever. He's just being a jerk, and he's coming in on his own terms. He doesn't think he needs to be covered up. He thinks he has the right to be there, and he's not a participant. He's just watching. Right. He's a spectator, like Herod. Right. Herod's intro. Oh, this will be fun. Do some miracles. Yeah. And Jesus doesn't answer him a word, and this is the kind of curiosity or whatever that this guy has that's actually more offensive than the people that just rejected the invitation flat out. And he gets bound hand and foot, cast into the outer darkness to the place of weeping and gnashing of teeth. The punishment is actually more extreme because the others are just, we know, of course, in a sense, it's the same punishment, but as it's described, the others, they're just killed. But he's put into the eternal place of torment.
Yeah.
And so, this is definitely that he rejects, of course, he rejects the garments of righteousness. He rejects everything about this family. And, he's trying to, so I wanted to, so I'm listening to this book by Douglas Wilson, which I've never read anything by him before.
Which book?
Do you know who it is? It's called Future Men.
Oh yeah, it's a great book.
It's a great book. Yeah, I'm filled with guilt. I wish I could live my life over, but it's really. He brought up this, which I didn't know about.
It takes faith to raise boys, right?
Yeah, it takes faith to raise boys. That's a beautiful concept, right? You have to believe. You have to be optimistic, and not focus on the sin, but focus on the promise. And yeah, it's great. Yeah. Anyway, so he brought up in there. I was just fascinated by this. Chapter 20 of the Westminster Confession of 1646 on Christian liberty. And he's got a great chapter in there where he brings it up a couple times. But there's one chapter where he talks about how we use Christian liberty to mean that I have the freedom to do what I want to do and you can't judge me. And he brought this Westminster Confession up as an antidote to that. So I want to read it to you. So he writes, "The liberty which Christ hath purchased for believers under the gospel consists in their freedom from the guilt of sin, the condemning wrath of God, the curse of the moral law, and in their being delivered from this present evil world, bondage to Satan and dominion of sin, from the evil afflictions, the sting of death, the victory of the grave, and everlasting damnation. As also in their free access to God and their yielding obedience unto him, not out of slavish fear, but a childlike love and willing mind, all which were common also to believers under the law. But under the New Testament, the liberty of Christians is further enlarged in their freedom from the yoke of the ceremonial law to which the Jewish church was subjected, and in greater boldness of access to the throne of grace and in fuller communications of the free Spirit of God than the believers under the law did ordinarily partake of." So what he points out in reading this, right, so I know I read that fast and you don't have time to absorb it and think about it and look at it word for word, but I don't think there's anything in there that we would disagree with.
Right.
That the liberty of the Christian is freedom from the guilt of sin, the condemning wrath of God, and the curse of the moral law. In other words, the freedom of the Christian is not freedom to do what he wants.
Right.
Right. and so we're like abusing this terminology, right? Christian liberty. And Christian liberty means that I can drink beer and nobody can tell me I can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not actually what Christian liberty is.
Right.
Now there's a sense in which, of course, this is, again, there's a place where we shouldn't replace the commandments of God or the doctrine of God with the commandments of men, or however that goes, right? And we shouldn't bind consciences and make up laws and call things sins that aren't sins. But at the same time, the liberty of the Christian is not about trying to maximize pleasure or to, have as much fun as possible.
Right.
It's actually about holiness.
Yeah.
And I thought it was remarkable. And, in thinking about this text, I just thought I could just imagine, in our context, it's not hard to imagine, because we hear this kind of abuse of Christian liberty all the time. Well, I can come to church in whatever clothes I want to, right? Yeah, I suppose, but some things really aren't appropriate. And this isn't, Christian liberty isn't flexed. You don't, again, right? What's it? It's freedom. You're going to be a slave one way or another. You're either a slave to sin, or you're a slave to the righteousness of God. And if you're a slave to the righteousness of God, you're not free to do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when we discussed, I don't remember what Trinity Sunday it was, but it was the 10 lepers. And that same Sunday, the Proverbs 4 is the Old Testament reading, and then something from Galatians, I think. And the interesting thing about like Proverbs is Solomon takes great pains to show the difference between like freedom as it's defined by the world and freedom as it's defined by wisdom. Being completely consumed by the wisdom of God actually allows you to run freely because there aren't any obstacles. But when you are free, quote unquote, in the way the world defines it, you're actually a slave to your flesh. Right? You do what your flesh wants whenever it wants it. You think you're in control, but it's not you. You're not making the decisions. Your flesh is.
Right. And it's leading to Sheol, right?
It's leading to destruction. Yeah. To death.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Right. Whereas being a slave to the righteousness of God, right, listening to wisdom, being guided by that, staying on the path, which seems so restrictive, to the fallen flesh, this is actually the way of life. And
because there's no obstacles, so you can run.
Yeah. And it's and there's nothing you can run, and it's anyway, I just, what this guy, I think, is he comes in on his own terms, right? And he's going to decide, how he kind of handles this and so forth. And this is, and so I've usually focused on this half of the gospel when I've preached this, and I think part of that might be because we have the other parable earlier in the season, but also because this is the part of the parable that seems to me most pointed to the people that are listening to us preach, right? So they've come to the feast, right? They've come to the wedding feast. They're in church, and now the question is, okay, you're here. God be praised. Are you here the right way? Are you actually attentive to the Word of God? Are your heart and mind captive? Are you being honest about your sins? And all of these things that are really part of being a Christian and part of being in the presence of God and part of coming into the Holy Communion. And of course, I don't mean that in a works righteousness way, but to be covered with the garments of Christ means there's none of your own garments peeking through.
Right.
So you don't get to put your own twist on this.
You're not an individual.
You're not an individual, right? And you submit to you yield to him in the language of the Westminster Confession, right?
Yeah. So how do you translate to how that is not done today, how the yielding or submission is not done today.
Well, I mean, I think that's we're awfully concerned about our own tastes, and we're hesitant to give up any of our kind of. Well, I mean, look, we don't want to give up our money, we don't want to give up our entertainments, and we don't want sort of brass tacks instruction from the pastor about what's going on. I think, all of those are kind of we're sort of half yielding, right? And I mean, we showed up, we're there, but, let's keep all of this theology at a kind of abstract. Just preach law and gospel, pastor, right? Just preach law and gospel. Don't tell me anything about Christian life. Don't tell me how to avoid temptation. Don't make suggestions for, right? I mean, let's just keep this law and gospel. I'll do the applications myself, right? And I think that's a real that's like, that's almost like what the Sadducees were doing. I mean, it's this kind of distancing from or compartmentalizing of the gospel and kind of keeping it in one aspect of our life, but then not letting it change us or mold us in all aspects of our life.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the classic one for me, and almost every pastor has faced this at some point. You got a widow, right? And if she remarries, she loses her husband's pension. So she doesn't remarry. She lives with the guy, right? Because it's that way they got a lot more money. And then the pastor tries to confront him. Hey, this isn't right. This is a bad example for the rest of the church. And then what's the end? Hey, look, we're too old. Don't worry. We don't even sleep in the same bedroom. Yeah, whoever said marriage is just about sex? Well, I mean, this is a horrible appearance. You're not honoring marriage. You're pretending as though you're living right, as though you're married, but you're not. You're doing this for the sake of money. It's a terrible example to the church. What about the young people? On and on, right? And I've had this conversation, not a bunch, thank God, but I have had it a few times. And no kidding, every time people have said to me something to the effect of, well, Jesus would never want me to give up money. I'm like, you know what? I'm actually quite positive he would and has. Yeah. and I mean, it's like, some of these things are sort of, maybe we've got to kind of, figure out how it applies to our situation. But this is really pointed, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's kind of an easy example to see, because money is nice in that way because it does expose things.
Yeah.
We all do it.
How do you expose, the works righteousness within people who are lifelong Lutherans that know that, we're saved by grace through faith on account of Christ's work alone? I mean, one of the places I always see this is like in like nursing homes or things like that, where, people have been reduced to just basically being in bed and not being able to do anything. And they're always kind of saying like, I just feel so useless. I can't do anything. And, sometimes it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, this is God's preparing you for the last day.
Yeah.
Right? That he's taking away all of the things that you can do to show you that this really is just all about him.
Yeah.
And that's a really really stark, and people don't always like when I say that. It's like, look, perhaps you were relying a little too much on what you did.
Right. They want you to assure them that somehow they're still valuable. They're contributing.
Yeah.
Right. That's what they want to hear.
Exactly. But that's not what you have to tell them.
No, I agree. Right.
So, I mean, what ways do we see it elsewhere? I mean, no one who's actually in church is going to hear that example and say, oh yeah, those people in the nursing home, yeah, they're awful. But that's not me.
Right. Well, this is always the difficulty. I mean, this is why preaching is such an art and requires the Holy Spirit, because it is so hard to get through people's barriers, and we really are the weakness of a scholastic tradition like ours, right? Lutheranism is very much built upon medieval scholasticism. No matter how much Luther says he hates it, that's who we are, at least in part. And the problem is we're really good at having the right answers, and then once we have the right answer, we just quit thinking about it, and we're just so confident in it. And it's not that the answer is wrong, but this isn't really about knowledge. I mean, right? We really need to live. I know this sounds like really flaky, but we really do need to live in a relationship with God, in conversation with God, through His Word, that we're actually contemplating and thinking about these things deeply, and not just jumping to the sort of cliches, because there is an arrogance that knowledge can bring. I mean, it's the doctrinal.
I think the Bible says that.
Yeah, right. I mean, our doctrine is just an incredible gift and a marvelous heritage, and the systematic theology of the Lutheran Church, as contained in the Book of Concord and in less official publications like Gerhard and Pieper and so forth, is a marvel. However, there is a temptation in it to just be sort of overly confident that we're right and to not actually read the Bible. So one of the ways people
or even just live according to what the doctrine states.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's seen as a kind of a list of things to know by heart, but not something that actually is done.
Yeah.
Or to be acted upon.
I mean, I have days where I just wonder if this whole, if Walther hadn't written the book, The Proper, or, given these lectures on law and gospel, if we just wouldn't have been a lot better off. I mean, it is the thing that I love this statement by Luther that, right, whoever can properly distinguish between the law and the gospel deserves the doctor's hat. I think that's completely right. And I think that when Luther says it, he's sincere. And what he means by it is no one can do this. However, I mean, it's a very easy thing to sort of think one can do it. And then, like you see this you just get some congregations, what do they call documents or whatever. And I mean, that's what what do they want? They want law gospel preaching. I'm like, does anybody on this committee know what that is? I mean, I know you think you do, right? But this is really a much more complicated, difficult dynamic and reality than we tend to think. We've kind of reduced it to this, cliche sort of thing. And anyway, so I think there's a lot of that going on. And in terms of, again, this kind of distancing ourselves by intellectual act from the reality. So whether that's like you're saying, the old thing was head knowledge and heart knowledge, which is kind of, okay, it's an attempt again to sort of get at this reality that what does it mean to actually live in and by grace and to extend that to other people? What does it mean? If we've really,
what's the difference between knowing and believing?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, right. Sins are always acts of faith, because we're acting according to what we really believe.
Right.
If we're not acting according to our doctrine, we're actually acting according to our faith, which is that God is far away and we can get away with this and this will make us happy. More kind of grossly, what I need is not God to forgive me, but what I need is for these people to be impressed by me. And so, I'll do what I need to do to earn their favor, while neglecting God and His Word and the like. This is the hard thing. How do you expose people? How do you do the Nathan thing and catch them?
Yeah. So is that because they don't believe that God's recognition of them is real?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, right. This is. I love this in the garden, right? When God comes for Adam and Eve, it's so great. He comes walking in the garden, right?
Yeah.
Quietly, gently, right? But they're just convinced He's there to kill them. And it's really who's changed, right? God didn't change. He still loves them.
Yeah.
And they're the elect, and he knew them from before the foundation of the world, but there they are hiding behind their fig trees, pointing fingers at everybody, because they've been corrupted in this gross way, and to believe that God really loves us. I mean, this is the ultimate reality of faith, to expect good from God. I think Saint Mary is the best example of this, both at the Annunciation, and I also love it at the wedding in Cana, when she gets rebuked, and then she turns and says, "Whatever he tells you to do, do it." Right? I mean, there's this just marvelous thing that, look, I don't know what he's going to tell you to do. Maybe he's going to tell you, pack everything up, let's go home. These people have had too much to drink. It doesn't matter what he tells you to do. I mean, in a sense, it matters what he tells you to do, but I mean, she totally trusts in that moment that it's going to be good. Whatever he says will be good. Whatever comes from him is good, right? He didn't die for us in vain. This is why also the parable of the unmerciful servant, I think, is so huge, right? What does it mean to have been forgiven this kind of debt? How does that impact your reality? How do you get forgiven that kind of debt and then walk out and demand that somebody repay you this teeny tiny amount? Only if you don't believe it, that you were really forgiven, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the sort of, I think this is a lot of what drives us in a bad way, is that we don't really believe we've been forgiven this kind of debt. Either whatever, that's why we got to take care of ourselves. We got to make our own way.
Well, it's kind of like, I have a member in my congregation who works for the FDIC. So she's a bank examiner. And she says, whenever we catch people who are embezzling from banks, and we do this quite often, they always think they're going to pay it back.
Yep.
Right. This is a loan.
Yep.
Right.
Always.
So they've justified these things in their minds. So maybe it starts with the self-justification of sin, so that we can have then the self-justification of the sinner.
Right.
Right. So just like abstractly, how do you self-justify your sins?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you excuse this? Or how do you pretend
Right. And so it's not like you work it off, but you have justified it by your own reason.
Right. I didn't really mean it. Right. Well, here's what you hear all the time with, men that are struggling with adultery, and they'll say, I still love my wife. I just also love this woman. And, and it's like, no, you don't. Apparently you don't know what that word means. Right? You think the word love means this just person fills you with warm, fuzzy feelings about yourself, right? That's not what the word love means. You don't get to have, it's just, So I think that you're right. There's that. It's usually gambling. They usually need the money to do something, but of course they're going to win it and then they're going to give it back. These embezzlement cases are almost always gambling.
Yeah, but it's always seen as a loan, right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because if you were just going to steal it and buy a motorcycle with it, how would you pay it back, right? It's I'm just on the edge of winning, and I'm gonna make and these gamblers also always have such grandiose plans. Oh, like how much money they're going to give the church, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, am I going to give the church a lot of money when I win this money without working for it?
Yeah.
Then I'm going to give it all to the church.
But I think that this same kind of thought structure happens with all of our sins. Right. So that self-justification, that we find a reason of why we can do this. Well, I mean, just think of, our own gluttony or, like I need that extra scoop of ice cream.
Right.
Or
I'll do some more push-ups tomorrow. Right.
Which we know is not true.
I know. Right.
Or even I've already gone off my diet today. So I may as well really get off. It's kind of like,
that's right.
I've already taken one wrong turn, so I may as well just completely get lost.
I know, right? Well, right. Well, that's that whole perfect's the enemy of the good fallacy, where we right. I can't keep this perfectly, then there's no reason to do it at all. I think that does impact a lot of our good works too. This kind of perfectionism, that if it can't be perfect, don't do it at all.
Oh yeah.
But you're right. I think there's also
that's the two sides of this, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So the sin of commission and of omission working in the same kind of thought structure.
Yeah, right. So we're
So maybe
either
we've
we're
nailed it.
groveling. Yeah. Well, I think that the self-justification thing happens in lots of ways. I think we also sometimes pretend like somebody else is committing these sins, you know?
Say more. I
This
don't.
sort of, I think, like for example, sort of like pornography and masturbation, right? That these are like, oh, somebody else is doing this, right? Or this is, I don't know. It's like it happens in secret. Nobody knows about it. Therefore, it didn't really happen. Or, or that's what I mean. There's this kind
So,
of
like, if a
almost
tree
like,
falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it,
I
did it
mean,
really fall?
yeah, it's this kind of extreme compartmentalization
Yeah.
where we sort of, on Sunday morning, we're this Christian person, right? And we can put on this, I don't want to just call it a facade, but it is a facade. And then,
It's a mask.
but we can be doing, wicked, evil things as long as nobody knows. But that's a real fantasy because, these things come out and, God warns us of that. Nothing, right? The things that you say in secret will be spoken aloud. And, right, there aren't going to be there's no secrets. And I don't think that's not just a threat on the last day, because who cares then, right? Oh, good. Go ahead. Tell everybody, right? I'm forgiven. Nobody cares, right? We'll be fine. I can bear the shame on the last day. Well, that's not what he's saying there, though that's part of it. But these things have consequences in the real world in real time. And like for that, for example, I mean, if you're wasting yourself with that sort of thing, then you're not present for your wife.
Right.
And, she's going to figure this out. And I hope she's going to figure it out. I hope she's paying attention and she's going to rebuke you and help you. Right. But, and if she hasn't, you need to involve her
Right.
to deal with this. But it's not going to just go away. Right. And it's not going to, and it's already damaging your relationships. It's hurting your marriage. It's hurting your soul, your psyche, your body. Right. I mean, all of these, gossiping, right. Nobody gets away with gossip. Right. You might get away with it for a little while, but right. It doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
We get busted on all this stuff. And, there's really no real secret sins in that sense. Because they never just, it's never just between me and the devil,
No,
so
he doesn't want it to be.
Thing, huh? No, of course he doesn't want it to be.
No, because that's how he can, kind of like blackmail you.
Right. So I think that, there's all sorts of games that we play. And I mean, the answer to all of it is simply, to be in the Word of God and to, just to stay in it and to make use of the means of grace and to, right, come to the wedding banquet. The answer isn't don't come to the wedding banquet, right? The answer is come to the wedding banquet and accept the robe that is given to you and, continue to be exposed and called back to repentance, right? Accused and threatened and instructed by the law and fed and nourished by the gospel in the way that God intended, and living in community, with accountability to one another, and not giving into these things, not being ruled by them.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's not that pleasant. I was just telling somebody, it's one of my shut-ins, but so I have, several seminary professors in the congregation.
Right.
And, they're very kind and they're very gentle, and they don't do this every week or even probably not even every quarter, but all of them at various times, will and do point out whatever flaws I have, in a sermon. I mean, they critique things.
Yeah.
And, it is never pleasant for me, right?
Yeah.
I do not enjoy it. I mean, I want them to tell me how great I am, not how this could have been better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in my flesh, right? And so it's always unpleasant to endure that because we don't enjoy that. But I am sincere when I say that even though I don't enjoy it in the moment, I really am thankful for it. And I do really love them for that. And I don't want them to stop. I mean, because it's wonderful to have that kind of discipline. I'm glad that I'm in a place where I know people are watching and paying attention and I can't get away with much because it's good for me. And I need that, even though I, sometimes chafe under it or whatever. And, that's a blessing of my particular circumstance, but it's not unique. I mean, we all need that and should have that. We have to have brothers that will hold us accountable, chastise us, rebuke us, encourage us, and so forth, right?
Definitely. I mean, this is the problem with, getting kind of tips on your own preaching, because, I mean, you're able to get that, but, a guy like me out in the middle of nowhere, right? We don't have that kind of feedback necessarily.
I know. We got to figure out a way. I've been thinking about this for years, and I brought this up I taught a D-Min class, and it was because, well, first of all, it's in all the literature. I mean, if you read anything about how to get better at writing, how to get better at public speaking, how to get better at storytelling, how to become a better comedian, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody, it's always, you've got to get feedback and find out if your intended audience is actually connecting with this. And so the feedback loops, it's in a lot of homiletics books too. Well, it was in Why Johnny Can't Preach. Mm-hmm. I can't think of that guy's name, the author, but he talks about this at some length. He thinks
like T. David something, isn't it?
That's it. T. David Gordon or something like that. I think he's right. He has he talks about it. We need to do this. Ministers have to get over themselves. They need critique, and feedback and so forth. And of course, he's coming from a different tradition. His understanding of the ministry is not ours at all. But boy, you bring this up with a group of pastors. I mean, the claws are coming out. It's a very, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I think we got to keep talking about it and thinking about it. And I realize, I'm in a point in my career where I'm a little more stable, and it's a little bit tougher when you're 26 years old, and you've got elders who maybe aren't really qualified to make these. Do you really want those guys critiquing you?
Right.
So that's fair, I think. And there's other situations where we really don't want to set that up. At the same time, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm really flustered by it, and we need, I think, a formal process in some way to think about this, because it's what we need in order to actually take our craft seriously and to improve. So I don't know what the answer is. Yeah. So what do you do in your situation? I don't have any. Here's some canned advice to give you.
Yeah. No, I mean, usually what I do is, I just ask, there are a couple of guys that I will ask to, every once in a while, not every Sunday, but every once in a while, like, okay, how was this? Or if they're in my circuit, when I'm hosting the Winkle, I'll talk to them afterward. Like, okay, what could I do better? But it's usually me seeking it out.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with seeking it out, but I think we do. It would be good to have. I don't know. I've thought about this a lot. I haven't really done anything. I've talked to people about it. I can't seem to come up with a kind of a programmatic way of sort of dealing with this. But anyway, even if we don't have it for preaching, God forbid we don't at least have it for other aspects of our lives. And of course, our wives can provide a lot of this in terms of, okay, you were too hard on the kids, or
right.
You can't keep ignoring this. You got to do, those sorts of things. But we got to live in that kind of, we need community to keep us. It's not good for us to hide our sins, right?
Right.
It's not good for us to get away with things. We actually, it's healthy and best for us to actually have to confess and then be forgiven, and then, take steps to avoid temptation and live in this cycle of confession, repentance, forgiveness, starting over, right? And on and on.
So in light of that, would as part of this text then, would you like kind of point out how if you're hiding sins, they won't remain hidden?
Yeah, I mean,
So you're fooling yourself?
right. I think, you think they're hidden, but, you're not wearing the garment, right? You can't wear both cloaks. So you got to take off that sin, right? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know, I'm trying to, but, it's like you can't walk in wearing a masturbation coat, right? You got to take this off. And you don't take it off by just, silently saying to God, "Hey, I didn't really mean it. Sorry, I won't do it again." And then just keep it on, and then put on His cloak. It needs to come off, and it needs to come off. You need to turn away from it, and it needs to be repented of. And it's. I recognize that it's shameful, and you wish it weren't so, and you don't want it to be. And I'm not saying this is. We need to have you come to the mourner's bench or whatever and confess in front of the church, but you need help, right?
Yeah.
And we're here for you, and let's work through this together, and let's do the things that God has given us to do. Let's hear the word, let's receive the sacraments, let's pray, let's hold one another accountable. But let's not hide things because they're not hidden. You got in here, right? The ushers let you in. The ushers let this guy into the wedding feast, but the king recognized it, and he gets bound hand and foot and thrown into outer darkness. And this is first use of the law, right? This is the threat, and it's meant to keep us on the straight and narrow. And God gives us these threats in mercy. It's a warning,
right?
So let's heed the warning.
Yeah,
He wants us there. Right? It's not
right. No,
this
definitely.
isn't like some sort of jerk move, by God. You're not cool enough to be in the club. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, that's how everyone hears it, right?
Right. That's the problem. Or that's not the problem, but that's the defensiveness, And then that's where this kind of insistence comes in. Well, this is like this. I hate this. I hate this like come as you are kind of Christianity.
Yeah.
Because I know what they mean by it, so I shouldn't be too. So I don't want to be too harsh. I think I understand what they mean is that right. The good and the bad, they're invited. They're
Mm-hmm.
But you don't come as you are. God is changing you. He's offering you something. You don't get to just stay this way.
Right.
Why would you want to? Again, it's like take off that filthy garment. Here, look at this. Put on this. Here's the ring for your finger. Why would you stay in that?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah. Well, why would you?
Because again, you don't really trust, right? I think the problem is we don't really believe that the righteousness of Christ is enough, or it's going to really satisfy, and we're holding on to whatever false promise of pleasure was in this other thing.
So it doesn't seem real.
Yeah, it's
because you can't see it, or you can't touch it.
Right.
That's. It obviously stems from unbelief, but it's kind of with all the various promises. It's what is it that we're holding out on? Like, do we think he's holding out on us? Are we mad at him? Are we? Does that make?
Yeah, I think we think he's holding out on us. He either isn't smart enough to know what would really satisfy us, or he doesn't really love us, and therefore he's not going to give it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We can see for ourselves that this is good for food, capable of making us wise.
Right.
We don't look. I can see. Look, obviously, I need to take care of this because for whatever reason I can't trust him to do it. And we've got enough experience at this point. We ought to know, right? How many times do I take money from the bank and go gambling and not win? Why would I think I'm going to next time? How did I get into this mess? Why would I think more of it would fix it?
Right.
But I'm not trying to mock. I'm mocking myself. I'm not trying to pick on embezzlers or gambling addiction people. But it's just this is how it's the same thing. We should know better, right? I gossiped about people and it got back to them, and I feel terrible, right?
Yeah. So how is it?
But I do it again.
So how is it that we can see this in others, but we can't see it in ourselves?
Well, that's right. I think that's part of this kind of hidden sin thing. Our sins are not so hidden as we think. That's what I'm saying. People know. Okay. I know they don't know exactly, right? But
right.
Come on. Nobody meets Jason Braaten and doesn't realize he's got some issues, right? I mean,
Thanks,
you're
Dave.
welcome. Yeah. I mean, no, but I mean, really, come on. We're actually, it's not that hard to discern. This guy's arrogant. This guy's proud. This guy's, whatever. This guy's way too into, why is this guy playing video games? Why is this guy so overweight? Why is this guy pounding on doctrine in a way that is just legalistic and doesn't make sense, right? I mean, we see this in each other, and I mean, love covers a multitude of sins, right? Bear with one another in love. I mean, well, look at your own, right? Your wife, right? She knows everything that's wrong. She could write up a list that's probably more accurate than the devil himself about you and what's wrong with you. But she bears with you in love, right? And she covers over for your weaknesses and your sins. But it's one thing to sort of see a weakness, and it's another thing to...
I don't know about that, Dave. Usually she's pointing them out to me.
Good. She should be. I mean, but believe me, she's not pointing them all out. She knows more than she's saying. So... Yeah,
I can see it in her eyes.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, why can we see it in others and not in ourselves? I mean, we're just delusional and vain, and we think we're getting away with stuff, but we're not, and we're actually presuming upon the generosity of the people that we love who put up with us, which again is really sad that we would do that to people we love. And I think maybe the people we love should be a little bit harder on us in pointing these things out so that we would become better people. And so we would, I mean, of course they ought to do this so we don't endanger our faith, but even beyond that, hold us a little bit accountable so that we would grow, right? Desiring the godly things and so forth. Whew, it's going to be a lot of law that Sunday.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I mean,
it's a heavy law parable. What are you going to do?
You can't do anything about it. People are
getting bound hand and foot and thrown into eternal darkness.
But it is the quintessential, it is your fault because of it. Yeah. Right? There was all of this grace and mercy and patience and endurance, but you would not. It's kind of...
And he's not going to let you, I think, so we forgot to say this one other thing about this is that, the king is too gracious to leave these people there where they're going to infect others. Yeah. I mean, this is like the cleansing of the Holy Land, which of course doesn't quite happen, but that's the point of it is that, look, this stuff is dangerous, not only to you, but
it's a little leaven. That leavens the whole lump.
Right.
So then how do you take into account the final verse, for many are called, but few are chosen?
Well, it's just...
And do you work that in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's again, I think really, that's a law passage, right? Because, I mean, you can try to gospelize it, but in the end, what it means is not everybody gets in. Because it doesn't say everybody's called, everybody's chosen.
No.
This is a kind of call to reality to the church to recognize, what the situation. Okay, so I was thinking about this, preparing for this, and this is going to be really harsh. But you know how everybody has cousins. I mean, everybody, but anybody that has cousins. You have cousins. You know what your mom and dad think of your cousins and their moms, right? And there's always some tension because even though they love your cousins, their family's a little different and they have a little different rules than yours, right? Mm-hmm. And which of us wasn't warned? Yeah, okay, we know they do that, but we don't do that.
Right.
Right. And there is a kind of, there is this sort of what a father does for his son is, look, I'm not saying you can't be friends with your cousin, but I'm saying go into this friendship with your cousin with your eyes open and recognize that there's some division in the family and we don't fully approve of all the choices they have made and the way that they're, whatever it is, the movies they let their kids watch or, right? And there is this kind of call to reality that you have to do even within the family and recognize this. And it's not a pleasant thing to say, but it's necessary. That's what this is, right? Many are called, but few are chosen. Is like, look, the invitation goes out to everybody, and then it's rejected. Not everybody comes. Then go out, get all the good and the bad, and still jackasses show up without the right clothing, right? And this is what you're going to face in reality. Do not go out there naively and think that you can convince people to believe in the gospel and you can fix the world with pure doctrine, or that you can, kind of live naively. You have to be aware this could happen to you. And even if it doesn't happen to you, it is going to happen to others, and you need to be alert. And so, I mean, I think it's a sad sentence. Many are called and few are chosen, because ultimately this is not everybody gets in.
Yeah. So beware.
Beware. And, and this isn't
take it serious
in harshness, but it's, God, he's not the God of confusion, and he doesn't mislead us through his word, right? Like a sort of mother who doesn't want to deal with something, my favorite story about this was my example. I have my sister, when they bought a van a long time ago now, when her kids were little, that had a DVD player, like the screen on the back of the thing, and they told the kids it only worked on the interstate. Because they didn't want their kids to watch. So, I mean, look, God doesn't do that. He doesn't lie to us to sort of shut us up and to not have to do the hard work of teaching us. So he's telling us the truth here, even if it's not the truth that we want to hear, because the truth will set you free. And he's bringing us into this as those that he loves and, in a sense, even respects.
All right. Anything else?
Nope, we got everything we could have possibly got.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I thought so, yeah.
Just had to check, just in case.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. We'll catch up next week.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Bye.